So we picked Livonia for this one, and first things first is we're going to look at the terrain. We're going to create a dummy folder, move all the files into it, and then begin looking at how we generate the map data as we go. Alright, so right now we're just setting the attributes of everything. So I've just opened up the Altus version, and we're just going to be copying across all the details. Contact DLC requires that DLC. Title is Patrol Ops 4, and this one is Livonia. I'm hoping I spelled that right. Then we go down, don't care about keys, nothing in the initialization, and we're just going to make sure that the independents are friendly with the Op4, not the Blue 4, because we're going to be running a NATO version for this one, and we're not going to binarize. So the environment will leave because that all gets overwritten anyway at the mission start. Multiplayer, now this is a cooperative, and if I count up, I think it was 32, so do 1 to 32. Summary, we add our summary in, I think it's this text. Not enabling AI, you can auto assign if you really want. Respawn, all that's disabled, because that all gets overwritten. Tasks, we want to make sure propagate. Revive is disabled. Incapacitation, yeah, we're not using any of that for this for now. Performance wise, dynamic simulation is on, and we're just going to leave all the defaults for now. Cool. Alright, so we're going to save this. We're going to call it as this, but we're going to call it obviously for Livonia. So now we're simply going to jump to here, and you can see we've got 6 for Enoch. Okay, that's what they called it. So it's important to note, when we generate our map config, we're going to need to remember the name of the map, because that's technically the world name of the config for this map. So when we go in, obviously there's only the mission file, so what we're going to do is we're going to go up to our Altus version, copy everything except the mission file, and we're going to paste it in here. Okay, so when we go to our editor, we've now got Enoch. We look at the file, it should mimic roughly the same configuration, but we need to quickly jump back to the Altus version, and we're going to bring all the assets from the Altus version across to Livonia. So I really only care about what's around base. I'm just going to copy all of that. The rest of it we'll come back for if we need it, but for now, that'll do. Okay, so let's find a place where we can set everything up now. Livonia only has the Luco airfield. Admittedly, I'm very unfamiliar with this map. I have not played this except for the single player campaign. So we will do a quick scan around. Actually, let's have a look at the airfield. because it might be an opportunity for us to maybe limit this to helos only, no fast movers, but we'll see how we go. This seems big enough for maybe a fast mover. Alright. What's the consensus? What do you guys think? Helos only, or will also enable fast movers?
Fast movers definitely will have a better impact on this map because it's a lot larger.
Rightio. Alright, so we'll use this airfield, and I don't think there's another airfield from what I can see. So, okay, so what we're going to do is just place down the assets we copied from the Altus version. Now the main things are the return point needs a home, and we will, we might put it down this end actually. Interesting, that's pretty good detail. Let's move a little bit to the right here. That should do it. Perfect. Alright, let's bring some of the assets from here. Reason why I reuse assets is mainly just familiarity. So people generally, when they see the similar type of assets around the area, they know that this will be the return point area. And we've also got a nice little thing here that we can use. So bring all these assets over. I'm just going to replace things. Alright, so that's roughly our return point. Okay, we've got our, just delete the things, we'll just get the medical center. What's a nice place for this? Here we go. So we might just put it right there. Okay. Just going to bring our medical marker over to mark that space. Okay, got our main respawn marker now. So this place here, so that looks like a good place to start. So this is just rough, we can always refine it later. We will want our halo. Let's put the halo They seem as good as any, I suppose. Okay, we've got our mission center. Can bring that down to here will do.
If you've popped your chat out to a second monitor, make sure it's the chat from this stream and not your previous one.
Yep, yeah, I can see you guys typing with Steph.
Alright, cool. Just want to make sure.
Yep. Yeah, I closed off that one. I was having glitches with the stream. Alright, we'll just delete the camo. We can always refine this later. Okay. Don't need any of that. We'll get rid of all of that for now. We will grab this little sign which tells everyone this is the Mission Operations Center. We'll put it over there. Cool. Get rid of that. Alright, we've got our AI recruitment space, so we will put that over here. Out of the way. Because people rarely use that. Alright, we've got our armory. So we're going to move that, put that down here. So make sure these signs are in the right spot quickly. Gear. Alright, now we've got a bunch of, what's that, Game Logic? Oh, that's the SAM site. Let's move that into a nice open area. Okay, so we've got this, now this one is our plain logic, and we've got our helo here. So we'll take this, going to move it over here, just rotate it around.
Would spawning it in the hangar be a bad idea?
No, but look at the level of the roof, and we're talking also the big heavy lifters, so it is a risk.
Yeah, like the Blackfish and GM.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So I know there's one on Tanoa which can fit the big VTOL, NATO VTOL, but this one definitely way too small for that. You need oh, what would it be? It'd be in Tanoa Airport. They don't even give us access to spawn it. If I spelt it right. Yeah, we can't even spawn it in. It's basically that big ass hangar near the main central airport. Okay, let's get rid of those. Don't use anything here. Vehicle depot. Let's actually park that for now. Where's a good place for the vehicle depot? Probably this grassy area here might do. So we're going to pretty much get rid of all of that. Get rid of that. Don't need those. I'm going to take these, move them over here. There we go. Ideally we'd get it in flat terrain, but that should be fine for now. Cool. Save that. Alright, now if we try and preview, it's not going to work because there is no map data. Let's put these in their places. Okay, so now we'll look at the map data. So the first thing is, as I said, is we need to remember this class name here. We're going to go into configuration and our configuration file. We're going to scroll down until we see the map data sub, and we're simply going to go include maps / config map that.hpp, and we'll spell include right as well. Save that. We're now going to create this file in our maps folder, so that's ready to go. There will be nothing valid, but it'll end up looking like something like this once we're done. Okay, so save that. We'll jump back to actually I'll do it raw. The first thing to do is just get a good look at our map, and while the script should automatically detect the towns, villages and so forth, we're going to do some predefining. That way we don't leave things to chance. So we're going to just scan around the map, and we'll pick a starting location. Let's start in the top left here. And let's pick yeah, I can pronounce it. Basically this town here, so we're going to have a look at it just to see, are we going to decide if it's a town or a village, and this is definitely a town. So what we're going to do is we're going to put down a game logic, and we're going to set the variable on this set variable MPSF location, I think it is, and we're going to call this a town. And just to set the area, we use a trigger, and I'm just going to use a 10 by 10 by 10, and I'm going to sync it to the module. So the module is going to set this area of the trigger as a town, and it's going to use the position of the trigger. So if it was to automatically detect it, it would put the center location as the label of the town, and then it would try and match the size of the town, but it would largely fail if things aren't perfectly aligned. This one looks like it might work, but we're not going to leave it to chance. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to set the trigger area as 100 by 100, and we're going to need a lot larger than that, so let's go 300.
Press 5.
Yes, good point. I keep forgetting about that. So let's set the area. You can also put it on an angle if you really wanted to. Just to make sure it covers the nice enough area. So that is going to be one town. Now I'm just going to quickly jump to Altus to check my variable name. Because you could see on the map earlier that I had started redoing Altus's map metadata, just to kind of simplify it a little bit. But same principle here. If we look at here, MPSF location type is the variable type we need. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're just going to copy those two, and then we're going to find all the towns. So this one here, this one could probably be almost city size, so we might, yeah, let's do this one as a city, so we'll make this F5 again, city sized, and what we'll do is we'll leave that spur open for now, and we'll just set this one as city. Let's move over here, have a look at this one. Okay, this is probably more of a village than a town. It's interesting that the orientation of these villages is roughly the same. So we'll call this one a village. Okay, we've got another one over here. So this one's got larger buildings. We might call this a town. Now notice we're not really caring too much about buildings that are factory types, because those will automatically be picked up. I'm more interested in the houses themselves. This one looks like it'll probably be a destroyed village. That's okay. We'll call this trigger, this logic, a village. Yep, village. this is quite a sparse area, but that would be townish size. Okay, so this over here is a farm, so it's just something to take a mental note of as you're going along. When the script comes through and automatically generates the areas, we may need to declare some of these as farms, but we'll let the script pick that up. So this one to the north, what's this? This would be probably another town here. This one, another town. It's interesting how these are, on average, much larger than Altus. Okay, here we
They're a lot less dense though.
are. Yeah, that's true. Okay, I've got one over here. Now this one's an interesting one because we could probably break this up into two, have one as a town and one as a village. So that would be the town section, and this, oh no, probably two towns based on the type of buildings. Break it up into two. We'll go over here. This one we will look at this, and it'll go. Just call that a town. This one's a small one, so we'll call it a village. So keep in mind, you don't have to do this, but just for quality's sake, the scripts aren't perfect, so they will. This just removes any chance of error. This one is just a horrible one, so we may not even mark this, we might call it something else. Now there's a whole bunch of task types you can check for. You've got shack, forest, villages, clearings, houses, farms, blah blah blah. And we've got this type called ruin. So instead of saying this one's going to be a town, we'll call this a ruin. And that means task types. See, the automated script will identify this as a location and a town based on the buildings, but we want to redefine this as a ruin, and therefore we can design specific operations and task types to run in ruins. You've got another ruin. Okay, we'll class this one as a village. this one actually is a ruin. Surprising, there's a lot of ruined areas now. So this one is still a ruin, but I'll probably declare that later as a military base or something. Call this a ruin though, for now. So this would be a small town with a factory. What's this? A small village here. What's that little thing there? Country shack. So this we can probably, I don't know, I might break this into two. One might be the town component here. And this might, we'll just call this area a village. Same over here, just expand it out a bit, and we'll define these as well as part of a village. Just leave some outlier homes. Okay, come back down there. Carlin. Definitely ruins along here, but we'll declare each little part as a separate ruin. So you just got to find the balance between too much metadata and too little. Declare that as a house. Keep in mind that's going back to our types that we are using for control ops. You can really declare any type you want, for reference in a task type later on. So ruins.
This map's got a lot of ruins.
I'll say, I've never seen so much ruins before. We've got what looks like a military base, but we'll come back for that one. We've got a little village just here. Is that a ruin? No, that's a good house, I think. Oh, that's
That's
a
the
barn.
sinkhole place in the campaign.
The sinkhole place. Ah, it is too.
I think you can manually enable it in the Eden editor if you like.
This one, this isn't the sinkhole place.
It's not?
No, that one is over, where is it?
I thought it was at the military base you were just looking at.
No, it's, gotta get my bearings here. Actually, maybe right, sorry. Is that it? No, that's not it. Where is it? Down here. So you come in, it's down here. This is it here. That's the sinkhole there.
Just waiting for the stream.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I recognize this area.
So then, yeah, the trick is you can go here and then underneath.
It's definitely a different color and texture than the rest of it.
Oh yeah, and it shows up on the map too as a giant building, even though it's not there.
Lol.
Alright. So, what we'll do is I'm just going to do a quick and dirty for the last part, and I'm just going to colour this in saying I really want to, I'll redo this later. I'm just going to do a quick and dirty on the areas. Keep in mind, this is really only as detailed as you want to make it. As I said, you can make any area type you want for reference in tasks. So if you want to create your own custom metadata or feed into the bigger picture, go for it. A little ruined castle up here. Oh shit, those are all ruins. Anyway, we'll leave them as ruins for now. I'm just going to save that, and we're going to preview the mission. Now this will fail and create a whole bunch of errors because we don't have map data technically for anything. And that's okay. So what we're going to do is simply take a look at the map. Okay. So open up our debug console, and we're going to look for our MPSF developer, and we're going to go to this function called generate map data. Now this function needs two things. It needs a sector width. Now by default it'll assume 1000 by 1000 meters, and if you want to draw the markers as you go along, which we do. So we're going to go 1000, comma true. Spawn, don't call, otherwise it just hangs for ages until it's finished. And then we're going to execute that. And then watch as my computer dies. Okay.
This just in, local Australian man's computer becomes airport.
Alright, so you can see it's generated, obviously when the stream catches up, but it's generated sectors across the entire map because the sectors check if they can go on land, which obviously this whole map is land. So it's rendered sectors all across. It's now going through each of the predefined locations we've made, pulling the area information in, declaring information about those locations. It's determining if they're cities, towns, villages, all that jazz. And just for speed, we're just going to zoom in right in our city. You can see the city here has the principal area marker, which is in green, and then the subsectors it's decided to create potentially for a future sector clearance task for that area, which we have not created yet. So zoom out, see how it's going. It's defining a lot of ruins as we expected. I'll just let this run for a little bit. You can see where we declared the ruin here and declared the house. It's recognized the location as a house area, even though it's got multiple houses. So technically breaching its coded definition by overriding it with the location. And now that it should have finished its main ones, it should now start sweeping the map from the center out for any locations we either missed, houses, all that stuff, and shacks, religious sites, fuel depots, farms, all of that stuff. And it will render them for us so we can see. And this allows us to assess whether we need to place additional logics to kind of clean it up and so forth. Once it's done that, it then goes through each and every single sector, scanning through for clearings and forest locations. Oh, and roads. So you can see here it's showing all the locations it's finding for both clearings, which is the triangle, and the squares, which are the forest areas that it thinks are good positions. And again,
I think it's just amusing as a loading bar.
Yeah, I kind of wrote that so I could actually keep track of how it goes. But you could also predefine these as well. So if you found a perfect forest location you want to use, then just whack down a logic with maybe a 5x5 trigger area and just call it a forest. So this is really important. You can see how it's generating all the forests and clearings for us as it goes, and if I zoom out it starts to slow down really fast, so we'll just stay nice and close in. At this point it also marks road segments in a rough distribution to use for later. But you'll also notice that these additional area locations don't get created in predefined areas. So if you have a large town area and stuff, it will make sure it does record it, but it's not really going to be used. And this is where the slowest part is, because obviously as it generates more and more it starts to get slower and slower. But I've never had this crash yet. But here's a good example of an area location which we might need to fix. The house's area is 200 meters by 5 meters. So we can clean that up later on in.
When you run it again, does it go from where it last left off, or does it have to restart?
It restarts.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. But you can also see, so here we defined a ruin. It also defined, in the area we did not cover, a house. It found a bunch of military buildings. It also found an industrial site already defined for us to use. So it creates additional metadata on top. Here you can see we probably should have declared this area as either a large town, maybe potentially even a city, not a city, a city. And instead, because we didn't do the config properly, I think we only did the ruin, it's identified a bunch of houses, villages and stuff around it, so this is where we'd probably place additional logics to clean this area up.
It's also likely having issues because some of the houses might not have the same common class names as what you saw for Altus and Stratus.
That's very true. So I did do a quick once over when they released the DLC, so I'm pretty sure they're okay, but there would be new factories and stuff that I might need to cater for. But this is the best thing about it, because right now it's running the is flat and empty commands across every single checkpoint as it goes. This means that every time it does it here, it'll never have to do it again, especially when you're running this on a production server. Therefore, it'll only be looking at the config, not the terrain mapping and trying to do a much more complex calculation while you've got 32 players connected. So you can see it's already done, I don't know, what's that, 2/5 of the map? We'll let it keep going, but you can see on the roads, creates this tiny little dot marker here just to let us know it's found some road segments that are good and viable for tasks or ID locations for events and that type of stuff.
What's the use of the darkened area at the bottom? This large area marker.
Oh, that's just to remind myself that I've got to redo all the logics in that area.
Oh, gotcha.
Just because I was being lazy and didn't want to spend... Because usually what I did, especially with Altus, is I spent, I don't know, easily a day mapping out all the details of the sectors and going into way too much detail.
Mm-hmm.
Remember what you saw from one of those earlier streams with the render of all the Altus metadata? That
Yeah.
was a day's worth of effort mapping that out, making it as good as I could do before I generated the map data for that.
So were you kind of teaching the script how to run?
I was teaching myself, to be honest. Because yeah, I wrote the script after I learned all those lessons from building those map configs.
Oh, I see.
This is why I think, especially with Arma 4, if they ever get to it, is with their map, they should include a metadata config of the map. Like, even if it's a huge metadata file, it'll still be more efficient than terrain mesh data. while we'll let that run in the background. Oh, geez, I left map click on. Whoops. Let's go back to here.
Nyom.
There we are. Let's have a look at our base around here. Interesting. It's a floating patrol op sign. Probably not the best place for those.
Well, buildings like that are the worst because sometimes it doesn't render the gear of whoever's inside it if you're outside.
Yeah.
It just keeps calling it.
I have to admit, I do love the detail they put into this map though.
Some people were complaining that it was a lot of daisy assets, but I'm not really complaining. Just means
Yeah,
more
they
stuff for me to use.
Yeah, and they transport this map to Daisy.
Who cares? I don't mind them sharing assets, it's one company at the end of the day. Well, you can tell this is Livonia because a lot of things are hovering off the ground. I'll have to fix all that. Anyway, it's just rough and dirty. Let's go check on the map. Alright, we're 4/5 of the way done. We've got four rows of sectors to go. So here's another little feature, is it's identifying shack locations, which are specific types of buildings. Just specific types of buildings which it believes are suitable for tasks that we may want shacks for. So, a good example is find some SOB hiding away in a shack somewhere, and you can create it in those little shacks, or maybe a nice little religious site here. If we have a look at this one, it's identified this building as a religious site, which is pretty much bang on. Ah, that is wicked. Never knew you could ring the bell.
That's pretty cool. Okay, Bohemia, we'll wait for Armor 4. Just keep giving us bells.
I never knew it could do that. As I said, I really haven't played Livonia much other than the Contact single-player mission.
Man, Contact was fantastic, though.
It was really well done. Alright, we're on our last row of sectors now. So what it will do after this is essentially start writing the config to text and then copy that all to the clipboard, allowing us just to paste it into that file we created.
Awesome.
So then all we have to do is save the file, reload the mission, and then we'll have metadata for the loaded in, ready to go. So we're almost done. We've got 4 sectors left. 3, 2, 1. And it's done. Okay, so now it's labeled everything, so you can see all the clearings it's found, the forest locations it's found, the houses, industrial sites, ruins, trees.
Man, that is really satisfying to watch.
Right?
So now it'll go through and start exporting. You can see it's exporting 0 of 159 sectors. So what it's doing is it's taking all the metadata in this sector, building it as an object, and then copying that to a string as it builds this out. So we'll zoom right in, that way spends the least amount of memory rendering everything, and it goes as fast as it can. So you can see it's 15 out of 169, 16, 17, 18 and so forth. So obviously some sectors have a lot of detail, some have almost none. So this first sector has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 areas in it. And down right in the bottom left you'll notice around the map is these air ones, and they're right on the edge. So there's 3, 6, 8 of them around the borders, and that's where the air assets will spawn in. Alright, so we're about halfway now. Okay, 163, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and here's where it's writing it to. So that was the sectors, now it's writing the areas. This just goes really quickly. Because remember, in the config file it's got sectors, areas and roads. So here's the sectors done, areas are about to finish, and then the roads will be next. So 1,221 roads segments to use. Okay, exporting, so now it's just processed, so we've got 16,217 lines copied to clipboard. We'll now go to our config map and paste. There we go, so we should expect to see 16,217, 16,217, all copied. So we go up, and we can see Enoch was created, and we're simply going to save that. So now, if we jump back to Armor, we're just going to exit out of this. When my Armor decides to not crash on me. There we go. Okay, so we're simply just going to view the config, and we should see under our mission config file, we want our mission config mission. Actually, no, where did I put it? Config map data, I think it is. Config mission framework, map data. There's Enoch, and you can see the areas. They're all the areas. The sectors, here they all are. And in each sector is the areas inside it, where it is, position, road segments inside it, and the types that we can use. So this sector here has a clearing, a forest and a ruin. And you can see here it's got 3 clearings, 3 forests and 1 ruin with the unique IDs of those areas. So we now have fully functional map data. So if we go back and preview the mission, it now has metadata, so theoretically we should be able to initiate a task. And cheers to Squad Armor for jumping on and checking it out. Alright. So what we should be able to do, and barring any sort of game breaking idiocy I've done, should be able to, I don't know, crash my computer by the looks of it, who knows, but I should just be able to run up to the mission console and request a mission straight away.
It's not crashing, it's just a feature.
Oh yeah. That's my memory running out of something. got to build a new machine. This is... Let's close off these files because we're done with that now. Still going. Still going. This is taking an unusually long time.
How's your CPU and RAM usage?
I dread to look. Keep in mind, oh, yeah. Memory's at 90%. So this is the problem with my memory, it keeps fluctuating. I've got it. It should be at 16 gig, but I burnt out one of my two of my modules, so it's down to 8. And then even then, one of the modules seems to be on the out, so I jump between 4 and 8. This is odd. It should not be taking this long.
It's a large map with a lot of detail. I wouldn't blame it.
Shouldn't take this long though. Yeah, and there it goes. Kill it. We'll restart the mission. Alright, while that loads, I'll be back in a second.
Right?
Alright, I'm back. And I was only just booting up. How brilliant. Alright. Added Livonia. Okay, so the next thing on our checklist is we've successfully ported the mission to the map. So the next step is to create a Livonian faction suitable for the terrain for NATO to combat against. So let's open up our mission. Alright. So for the purpose of this, because I'm going to redo these anyway, I'm just going to delete all these logics when my computer decides to catch up. Because we don't need these anymore, we're just going to delete them all. We've got our metadata for the purpose of this showcase. Let's zoom into here. So let's quickly check first, see if we can actually create a task. Quickly check the logs, see if I'm getting any errors. Nope, no errors.
Literally just taking a long time.
How's the stream tonight? Is it lagging too much?
No, not much at all. I mean, it's
No
just
lag.
compression issues that comes with streaming, but it's whatever.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Good. Yeah, my headset decided to freeze. Wasn't rendering any sound whatsoever. So I'm not getting any log issues with the map, but for some reason it just does not want to load.
Odd.
Yeah. So the way around this is just going to quickly uncomment Altus, because Altus is the larger one, I believe. So remember, Livonia was 16,000, Altus is 33,000.
Mm.
But even then, process-wise, I'm just going to kill it again. Right, round 3. And if this doesn't work, we'll call it a night. We'll do the faction creation in our next one. If
Gotcha.
this doesn't work.
It will work.
Let's try this again. Livonia. Alright, I'm just going to place down one unit as a test on an empty map, and let's see if we can just get this thing to load properly.
Wow, that initial low LOD load in.
Yeah, yeah. Alright, we're in. Oh, ouch, I had the volume turned up on that one. It blew out my eardrums. Let's try that
What?
again.
I can't hear anything.
Let's try this again. Zoom out. Alright, let's try this and see how we go. Not a good sign. Okay, config, data, let's have a look at that, make sure it's all closed off. Oh, hello. Something interesting in our formatting there. I think we may have found a bit of a glitch. That's why I love code on how it renders the stuff, or not. No, it's still just rendering all the colour. So it all closes off nice and neatly, which is what I'd expect. Sectors, areas, roads, all closes off. Enoch does not appear to be the problem. The other option is, so I'll actually go back to here. Oh, you really want to be a pain, don't you?
Just gotta believe.
So it's definitely not the load, because Altus is much larger and it has no problems there. The one thing I want to do is check the world name. But if I'm going to have to do this every time, it's processing something, but what is it processing is the question.
can you add a line to a couple places in your code to tell you where it hits on the system chat or something like that?
I could, but I can't see the system chat at this stage. That's the problem.
Sorry, not system chat. The RPT.
The report log, yeah. Just wondering where would I put it, because if it's not loading the mission in yet, what is it doing? Let's kill it. So it has no problem boarding really quickly. That's the interesting thing about it. It's a bit of a bizarre one, actually. Alright. Yep. Last chance. So what I'll do is actually take out the config and just see if that might be the problem. Because it did load without it for us to generate the map data. But I just don't think that is what would be causing the issue. Alright, editor, Bohemia. Right. Yeah, it's definitely coming up as Enoch. Which is the... There, alright. Let's try and have a load of patrol ops without the map config. Alright, so that worked.
So now it has something to do with the map config or how it's trying to call it.
It does, but I'm just trying to wonder what exactly is the fault. So is there a bunch of end of character lines not mapping properly, or what? Because it technically hasn't failed to load, it just has taken a long time to load. I just get impatient because it shouldn't take that long.
It's possible it's been looping over something.
Unless it's... see, all these have end of line segments in them. We'll compare them against Altus and see what we get.
That looks exactly the same.
That's because it is.
Oh,
It's failing to open Altus because I don't have enough memory.
that's an issue.
Yeah.
Maybe close the configuration.inc.
Yeah, it just did. Oh, the configuration inclusion should be okay because there's very minimal information in it. It's more to be honest, I just need more memory basically. Really got to fix my machine. Let's close off the config report file, all of that. Actually, let's just maximize the amount of. Alright. Okay. So I don't really think it's anything to do with my configuration for it. I think it's just my machine. It's had it at the end of the day. So if we look at Altus,
If you want, I could try to load it up on my machine if you have a fast way to send it, but unknown.
should be okay. My machine's just seen better days. I haven't upgraded it in a few years. Ever since it failed that one time and I had that short. Alright, so let's just copy that to here. Collapse sectors, open areas. Let's pick city as an example. Collapse that, and roads. Take a road segment just to compare. Let's look at Enoch. Let's look at the first sectors. Okay, I've got orientation is water type flags, areas, roads, that's fine. Position, orientation, all good. Radius is set, that's good. Okay. Look at a city. So a city has position, orientation, type. Yeah, nothing. Whoa. Oh, that's 873 buildings. Whew. That's fine. Areas isn't, and roads should be pretty straightforward. Yeah, nothing special there. Alright, let's close that. Config, let's re-enable the map data. We're going to reload this. I've never seen that happen before. Ah, because I went to bloody Altus. Let's try that again. Alright, let's check our config, make sure it's loaded in.
Muscle memory got the better of you.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I was thinking that exactly the same thing. Forces of habit. Okay, so all the sectors have loaded. We don't have any alerts to configuration issues. Roads, all our road segments. How many road segments have we got? Manageable. Okay. And we definitely verified that the world name is Enoch, so that's what it's going to be looking for in the configuration, which is right here. So for all intensive purposes, good to go. Right, last chance. If this works, great. If this doesn't, we'll call it a night and I'll debug it next time.
Doesn't look like it.
No.
Your frame rate's changing, which, I mean, the game is active. It's just,
Yeah, it's
I think
definitely
it's just
processing.
sitting there.
It's definitely burning my PC CPU apart. Alright. Well, if it wants to be a pain in the... we will let it be a pain. Let me just check the... it's definitely processing something, but I'll just leave it running in the background and we'll see how we go. So that's essentially how you would port it to another map. And then what you would do to create the faction is you would go and create a one similar to what's in here, just using obviously class names from the theoretical faction you want to oppose. So for instance, I have an op for Altus with all these variations, but then we've got this one I've been doing for the new tasks, which is a lot simpler. And it's just that here's all the guerrilla factions class names in that you would call as part of the task. So you'd simply replicate this with new class names. You could call it something completely different, whatever. And then it's this class name for the group that back in your configuration file right up the top, you simply say for your faction type bot4, that's where you would declare your group type. So as long as you're including it in the config factions here, they are simply available to be used, then you would declare it in your faction type op4, and that would change all the tasks and all the mission configuration to reference your new map configuration for your op4 class. And that's how you would set it up. So it's pretty straightforward, to be honest. If
Yeah,
you want,
simple enough.
to invert it, so say you want to run as an independent force, you would simply put your faction, so this one's referencing Blue 4 Altus, so we look at that faction here. While it's got all the same configuration, it's literally really not going to use any of this. It's simply going to use this information here at the top for the player faction, and that's what you would set your name. So while I've gone with the safe one, which is NATO here, you could make up any faction you want. This is where it would reference, so in all the task configuration it will go, okay, who is this faction? For the op4 it would reference the same thing, and then basically you're all set. So you don't necessarily have to be a west side, you could be east or independent faction. As long as your opposing force is set to hostile from your faction, you're good to go. You just can't have a common side, so you can't have two factions of the both independent faction or both east or west. They have to be hostile to each other, otherwise you're just going to walk into an AO, kill a bunch of friendlies and lose the mission. Cool. Is there any questions on that?
Nope, I got everything on that.
Cool. Do you have any questions in general?
I think this walked through fantastically on how to port a map, and hopefully it works better next time.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go debug the crap out of this and work out why exactly it wasn't wanting to, like, it's definitely processing something. It's got to be stuck on something. I'm not sure what that could be. But I'll test it on a bunch of different maps because, let me just kill this part of the process actually. Let's kill armor. Theoretically, let me just go to my map config. We will copy and paste that as backup, and I'm just simply going to copy Altus over the Enoch one and call this Enoch. Let's try it again. But also I'll load up. We could do it to any train as well. So you've got all these other trains that I have downloaded and subscribed to through Steam. So I plan to do the same thing across all these other maps. But now I just want to see if the Altus config will kick in for Livonia. Oh, and also intro cams. Forgot about those. Here, if you don't set one, it'll just skip over it. But if you want a nice intro cam to play off, this is where you would set it up. So you basically set your XYZ coordinates and direction the camera is facing to set it up. And if you obviously have multiple, we might do that quickly just now, just to see if I'll test Altus first, see if it works, and if it does, we'll set up the intro cam. this config fails, then it's not the mission, it is simply Livonia being a pain. Alright, it's the config. Fuck.
Dagnabbit.
Yeah, Altus worked. Anyway, so while we're here, we may as well test the mission. It'll just create it in a very odd location. So if we can see, we have intelligence tasks which don't align to the map because we're using obviously Altus config. But that's how it will work. Operations 2, we can then look at, let's do Dusty Cat. And it's created it right next to us. And north, and right over there. Okay, not the end of the world. So let's have a look at what those look like through Zeus. There you go. So they're off and running. There you go. So that works. Now, let's demonstrate the intro cam. So, I'm going to jump in here, we're going to create one for Enoch. Text equals, we've got our Livonia FOB. I'm just going to create a nice little intro text, and then we have these positions now. The positions, as I said, are X, Y, Z, and the direction. So the way you do it is you find a nice little rising spot to demonstrate what Livonia looks like. So we might want something like this, and then it'll pan up like that. So if we set this position, log position to clipboard, and I'll paste it in here. There's your X, Y, Z. But now we just need to work out what direction we are. So that's roughly, I don't know, 104 degrees. We'll try it. So I'll just do 104, and we're just going to turn debug mode off because the camera does not run without debug mode. There you go.
Hooray!
So that little intro, just that little position, you can then create more and more and more if you find nice little scenic points that represent the terrain. You would simply create them in. There's a good one here. So we might do this one here. Direction is that'd be about 316. And altitude of, let's do 23. So we simply just comment out the first one, test this one. Cool. So that gives you an example how you can then create a couple of different locations, get them all nice and sorted. Might move this a bit forward. And randomize your intro.
Yay! Now everyone doesn't have to look at the same intro every time.
Exactly. And there's a little trick in it as well. If you play this so many times in the future and you kind of get bored of the intro, just hold down the spacebar.
I know a bunch of our players would like that.
Yeah, it just skips the whole sequence. So you can just jump in, start running the sequence, and you're like, even when it's loading, just hold down the spacebar. And I'm holding it down, bypasses it straight away. Yeah. So yeah, I know people get sick of the intro pretty quickly. Alright, so we've covered off porting, covered off high level creating new factions. It's easy to demonstrate, but basically just fill out the config with new class names and update the details of the op4 and the intro camera. I don't think there's anything else to porting this to different maps. Can't think of anything anyway. Alright, so I hope you guys got a lot out of that. And yeah, as we get closer to release, I'll just work out why the Enoch config is not wanting to work for some reason. And then we've just got some slight tweaks to the tasks that need to be made. And I realized I did have a gap that I had missed off my checklist, which I've already started to work on, which is this logistics capability. So the ability to load and unload cargo containers and stuff like that. It's missing from this version, so I'm just porting it across from a previous build, and then we should be good to go.
Gotcha. Awesome progress, and this was really informative.
I hope you got a lot out of it, and yeah, we'll just keep working on this bit by bit, but as you can see, we're so close to the end, and this time I'm committing to not rebuilding the whole thing again.
Famous last words.
No, if I'm committing to it, I'm committing to it. before I made no commitment to myself to do that.
Alrighty, well, we're excited.
No worries. You can also see the support configurations here as well for the CAS modules and the artillery batteries. So these are all the virtual entities here that we can walk through another time. This one's a very useful one, which is the admins. So the isAdmin function that runs checks this. So you can see I've enabled it for single player and multiplayer can kick. So anyone who's logged in as the server admin who can kick will be deemed as true when that function runs. But you can also declare specific player UIDs or class names. So it'll go through and go, okay, does the player have this UID? And if they do, then they'll be deemed an admin as well. Or if they're a specific class name. So you could potentially reserve a specific unit to occupy in the mission, and that person, whoever occupies, will be the admin as well.
I just want to comment, I really like the commas on the left side of the lines because it makes it so much easier to read.
Yeah, it was a good idea. I've had this in the config for such a long time now, but I made a note that Mackenzie from Task Force 72 was the one who gave me that idea way back in the day, and yeah, that's quite a useful thing. The model attributes here is for the calculation of the events that occur. So obviously the bigger your squad is, the types of vehicles you have, your dispersion, your distance from base, and your time since your last encounter. It's a simple logistic regression model that uses those with those coefficients to then determine the chance of an encounter.
Heck yeah, like that cool spreadsheet.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You've got your intel drop types, so we might refine this down to slightly larger objects. Actually, no, I wanted to change the add action for picking up drop intel types, because right now it's tied to the object itself. I'm going to move it to the player before we do the official release, because that way, even if an intel is under an object, you should be able to pick it up. Downloading intel, these are obviously the object types it looks for. There's your weapons caches for your cache hunts. Tower types we've got to add in I've got them in the previous config, but tower types is determined based on the map, so destroying towers. What are the class types you want to do? Same for supplies. Operation names, we've been through that, that's just a bit of fun. This is the civilian simulation system. So based on the map data for farms, villages, towns and cities, these are the type of groups it tries to create, all these crowds are defined in the civilian faction. Here they all are. Crowd 4, 6, 12, 24, and some additional ones for journos, informants, and the elusive observers. There's your compositions. So as we add compositions in, we discussed that in our last stream, I think. The custom conversations that you can have with NPCs are all loaded into here. And then, yeah, your intro cams. So that is the complete mission configuration there. And this is where it all stems. So there's two main ones. There's the framework and then the actual mission. The mission is quite light on details. These are the main ones here you want.
The config is so in depth. It's like yes. I would like to have all of the options, and that's the best part. You can just change so much about it.
Yeah. Well, I learned long ago that every community has their own flavour, and rather than try and cater for everything, just at least give you guys the options to tweak it as you guys need to.
That's great.
So just as a note,
Thank you for...
here in all these scripts, each one has a configuration file specific for those features. So for the virtual depot, here's the configuration file for that. So this is where you would modify supply radius, the compatible mags, external bars, stuff like that. Virtual armory, it's the same thing again. Here's all the predefined roles that you can assign, the default loadouts that they will apply, and the traits that you allow them to do. So, for instance, a rifleman can only halo, whereas a grenadier is also an engineer and an explosive specialist. Obviously all of which can be overridden once you're in game, if you're the admin or the squad lead. Respawn.
It's going to be very handy.
Respawn's straightforward. It's just how many MHQs do you want to limit in the game, and what are the MHQ options. So when you go to, let me just open up the Altus one, just because it's a little bit more stable than this one, we need to tweak. But you would essentially say, okay, for the Truck 01 box and the MRAP 01, notice each faction has, well, each side, you got a west and east and a independent variant for each. When you jump into the, oh, come on, hurry up. When you jump into the mission and you go to the vehicle depot, you should see, come on, should see in the vehicle depot MHQ variants of those vehicles. And then it should only be allowed to spawn 3 of them. So if we jump over to the vehicle depot, so we know the hemped box, you have a hemped box version and an MHQ variant as well. So both are technically the same model, but if you spawn the MHQ variant,
vehicle asset deployed to your AO.
you have additional, oh, actually I did the box one, whoops. Let's just swap that out. There we are. You can see the MHQ variant is created, and that's denoted by a little flag on top to say it's an MHQ, and you also have the actions to deploy the MHQ as well.
Like how it gives you points too.
Yeah, no, those are just mythical points. I've got to create a little custom notification for the respawn. But also remember, we had config for the MRAP version as well. So if we look at the MRAP, which is here, you got a hunter and the MHQ version of that as well.
Asset deployed to your AO.
And obviously if you spawn a Op4 or an independent one, their flag color should be respective to the faction. But because we're doing this as Blue 4 or West, we get the blue flag, even if it's an Op4 vehicle.
That's pretty fun.
Yeah, it just means, you know, because there's a variant of the independent which is their MRAP. So the Strider MHQ comes in the AAF camouflage, but also the NATO variant as well. So it makes sense
Move
just
your
to
craft at the point
enable
your AO.
faction-specific vehicles that obviously have the right coloured flag, depending on whoever created them. So that means you could make Black Hawks and all these other vehicles MHQs as well, simply by going to your MHQ vehicles types in your config respawn and setting the helicopter variants in there as well. Recruit MP, there's not much in here at the moment. Mission console, there's nothing really in the configuration. Logistics, there will be. That's what I'm just moving across now. And if the thing is parameterized, so I know in Vehicle Depot I've added in parameters that override the configuration. So the configuration by default, it'll fall back to here if you don't include the parameters on the server. But the way most of these are designed is if there's an equivalent server parameter, it'll check that first before it checks here in the config.
Gotcha, just like a contingency.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, so we go functions, params. Actually, it's not in there, it's simply in the description file. You can see all the parameters just here. So for... I haven't included the vehicle depot parameters. I have to port them across from a previous version. But essentially it would check for the equivalent ones of external pylon interaction, for instance. So that allows, if you have that disabled, it means while you're spawning the vehicle you can edit the loadout, but if you enable external pylon interaction, you can only spawn the vehicle in the vehicle depot. You then have to go up to each of the pylons and set the loadout for each and every single one. Little things like that. And there's your limits
Very
as well.
nice.
So you got your standard vehicle limits as well. So only 2 planes, 9 helicopters. 9 helicopters. I might change that to 3.
Yeah, 3 is pretty balanced.
And keep in mind it's a hierarchy. So planes and helicopters are typically 100% of the aircraft, but just as a default, anything that doesn't fit within plane and helicopter can only have one of. Truck base as well is honestly universal for a lot of things, so 3 is kind of applied by default. But you can remove that and it means there'll be no restrictions to land vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
So if you only wanted 2 tanks in the AO, you just set tank equals 2 and it would limit all tanks and not limit any other land vehicle. And you could also have a
Awesome.
backup of all equals 1. That means there can only be 1 vehicle unless it's got a child above this which says differently.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like your catch-all if you need to. That's pretty much it in terms of the configuration options there. There's not much else in here actually.
So you could go ahead and spawn in 2 planes, 3 helicopters, 1 air asset, then 3 trucks, and then also 1 ground vehicle, or 1 whatever vehicle, because it's all.
Yeah, kind of. So what it would do is, so if you think about it, if you had all as the catch-all, actually if you just did 0, so, and had nothing else, you can't spawn anything. But by setting plane equals 2, it means you can then spawn 2 planes and nothing else. if you had planes, helicopters and air, then you could spawn 2 planes, 3 helicopters, or 1 air asset. So if someone's already spawned a plane and someone, say, tries to spawn a UAV, which is not a plane or a helicopter, it's something else, then that 1 slot in air is already consumed by planes and helicopters.
Okay.
So if all was 1, all is the catch-all. So if you already have a plane in the AO, then all is consumed. But you can spawn an additional plane because you've gone down to that child to say you can actually override the all with an additional plane, making that 2.
Gotcha.
But it means if you try and spawn, say, a tank, the planes have already consumed the all allocation.
Mm-hmm. So in this configuration, you can spawn 2 planes,
Yes,
but no tanks if 2 planes are spawned.
correct.
Man, it's that air equals 1 that's a little confusing, but I think I'll get the hang of it.
That's right, just think of it when you look at these and you go to the config. Actually, let's jump out and go back to the editor. I'll show you what how it means in the hierarchy. So if we jump somewhere, we'll just go over here. Okay, so I'm going to drop down. Say we've spawned a helicopter. Let's do a Ghost Hawk. Okay. So for the purpose of this demo, we're going to say helicopter 3, air assets 2, and all equals 1. And we might add another one to compound that. Like this. Okay? So we've got the exact class name we're trying to spawn. We've got helicopter, we've got air, and we've got all. So what this should allow us to do is spawn 1 vehicle in total for the whole mission. But we're overriding that to allow 2 aircraft. We're also overriding that to allow 3 helicopters and overriding that to allow 99 Black Hawks. So as soon as someone spawns 1 Black Hawk, all is condition met. There's only 1 vehicle. But because we've got the override of the hierarchy for air, only 1 out of 2 for air, 1 out of 3 for helicopter, and 1 out of 99 for that exact class name. So when you look at the actual vehicle, and we just go and find in config browser, and we'll just copy the parent hierarchy for this vehicle. This is the hierarchy it goes through. So first of all it goes, do you have a vehicle of this type? Then it'll go to its parent, then that's parent, then that parent, then that parent, then that parent, and that parent, and all the way to all. And then it just simply finds the maximum of these.
Gotcha. So it'll get whatever is closest to the class name.
Exactly. So if we just get our class name, and we go through the full hierarchy, which looks like that, this is equal to 99, nothing, nothing, nothing. Helicopter is declared as 3, air is declared as 2, all vehicles is nothing, and all is declared as 1. So this is basically what it then looks at. It goes, okay, so what's the maximum number I can do for this? And then that's it. So when another vehicle comes along that's not an aircraft, and it has no overrides because we're not declaring any other overrides, it's going to go through its parent hierarchy, and it might come out to the common factor being all. So there's only one vehicle allowed, and that's already been taken
And
up
if
by the
okay,
helicopter.
yeah, that makes tons of sense now.
Yeah, that's how it calculates the vehicle limits. So if you added in one in here called car, and we made that one 99, it's the equivalent of adding a 99 in the car's parent hierarchy, which a helicopter wouldn't see because there's no car in its hierarchy. But in a land vehicle, if it's not a tank, it could be a car, such as a truck or something like that, it would see 99, so it would use that as the limit for the cars.
Gotcha.
But then along comes a boat, you've got 4 cars, 6 Blackhawks, and all is consumed. So you wouldn't be able to spawn a boat in this instance. The only way to get around that, delete the all.
Mm.
And then what that would do is simply nullify this 1 on all the config, and now a boat would simply look like there'd be no limit to the boats. So you could have technically infinite boats.
Man, I wonder what leaving in that loophole would do.
Yeah.
Somebody would find it.
Yeah. So usually what you'd do is you'd invert this. You'd say you'd allow 2 Blackhawks, 3 helicopters, 2 aircraft in total, or maybe 4 aircraft. So that way you allow, if everyone fills up with helicopters, you can only have 1 plane. Cars, you could make 4 as well, but then you might have land vehicles because it's the parent of cars, and you might equal 5, and then you'd have all is your server capacity. So you might make that, I don't know, 20 vehicles. So there's your mission cap. You can't spawn any more than 20 vehicles per mission.
Alrighty.
Yeah, so that's how it works it out.
That all limits can be really useful.
Yeah, it's just get familiar with the hierarchies is all I can recommend. And the easiest way to do it is just plop it down in the editor, right click on them and go find in config viewer, and it tells you right down the bottom what the parent hierarchy looks like. And you can do that to anything. You can go to the van, and you can see this one is for the so this is the Gorilla van. It has truck is the child of the car. So if you set your limit at the car, you're applying this both to cars and trucks.
Perfect.
So that tells you the full hierarchy, so you can kind of understand where you should be setting your limits. And if you do soldiers, it's not really going to work for the vehicle depots because you don't spawn soldiers, but they've got a hierarchy too. bring around, experiment, play around. And yeah, that's how that all the config works. Alright, I think we'll call it there. That's 2 hours, roughly almost 20 minutes. And that's covered off the basically the full configuration of porting to new maps, configuring a new faction, setting up your intro cameras, and the overview of the general mission configuration. Alright, I think we'll end the stream there. Thank you very much for that.